Hey everyone, happy Monday. We're
Happy
excited to
Monday,
be.
you guys.
If you are a part of Say That channel, go ahead and put a one. You're returning, you are in the community, you're returning, you want to hear what we've got to talk about. We want to welcome you back. And if this is your first time with us, welcome. Normally on Wednesdays, myself and Winston, we normally talk about things that have to do with business on Wednesdays. But Mondays we get to talk about so many of the other things that we think about and we're curious about and have questions about. And then we look to other content creators, other thought leaders in the area to see what they have to think about. And then we all learn together. It's one of our favorite segments on Say That channel. And we're happy to grow and learn with you all. So, what's today's topic?
Let's do it.
How do we stop self sabotaging? It's a great question. My first thought is awareness, right? So you have to have awareness that you're even doing something that's self sabotaging. So immediately when I think of self sabotaging, I think of the person who like procrastinates doing something because they're so scared of failing or doing it wrong in any way. And so they just like don't do it. They call themselves perfectionists, but to be honest, you're just self sabotaging yourself because you're never actually getting anything done. Or someone who causes a rift in a relationship because they're ultimately they're scared that the other person is going to abandon them and leave them. So to like deflect from that, they'll like cause a fight so that they can like leave the other person or like leave the relationship before it really like
Mm.
anything really bad happened, right? So lots of different ways that people can self-sabotage, but I think number one is just being aware. If you're not even aware that you're doing it, like you got to name it to tame it, right? So if you're not even aware that you're doing it, how can you try to address it? And then from there, I think it's identifying why you believe that's the right thing to do. And it's usually because you feel like you don't deserve something or that you're a bad person. Anyone who knows that I talk about a lot about shame-based beliefs, I think a lot of self-sabotage comes from shame-based beliefs. You don't think that you're worth it, worthy, good enough, beautiful enough, whatever. Um, and so identifying that thought and taking the steps that you need to undo that thought. And it's a slow process. I don't think it's going to happen overnight, but it's worth it. Otherwise, you know, you're just going to like put yourself in a position that you don't really want to be in.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Um, what to? I agree with what you're thinking. Your thought is. I think awareness is key. What comes to mind for me to add to that, I would say, is maybe your friend group or your peer group. However you your tribe. Whatever your label could be. Um, I think they may be able to help identify some of these
Yeah.
some maybe behaviors that you could be exhibiting. To your point, that could be self or could be considered self sabotage. Yeah, and I say that only in the sense that they may be the people around you. I'm assuming they're the people around you who are aware of some of the goals you have. Janelle, you mentioned relationships. You may somebody pushing somebody away. If somebody's a really close friend, they're like, "Oh, you may talk so greatly about this person, this guy, this girl, but now you're ditching them or you're ghosting them, or they may be able to see that you're doing those things, and they may be also able to see how, if we assume the behavior is one that you don't want to
Mm,
be doing, they
mhm,
could see, oh, you're brokenhearted that this person is no longer in your life, but you pushed them away. They may be able to help you recognize that you're doing that, where you aren't. You maybe in your head you're saying, "Oh, see, they left me." You're not owning up to your point, You're not owning up to your behavior in it. You're
mhm,
only seeing the outcome of your behavior.
mhm,
Someone else now, again, a close friend could go, "Hey, you told this person X, Y, and Z. That's why they left.
mhm.
It's not that they just took off on you and so on and so. So I think that might be a good resource for someone to help to
I
have in what you
agree
said
with that.
around awareness.
100% agree with that.
Well, who do we got today?
Well, today you guys know that we are huge friends, friends. Yeah, let's say we're friends now, but also fans and friends of the School of Life. And so let's
Take
hear what
us to school.
let's hear what they've got to say on the subject.
I love it. Let's do it.
There's an enlightening and sometimes slightly painful exercise one can do by oneself to learn a bit more about the origins of how one feels and behaves. Pick out something emotional that you know you're not very good at now and write it down on a sheet of paper. Here are some examples. Staying calm, taking pride in yourself, trusting, missing people who go away. We often observe these traits in ourselves with a mixture of puzzlement and embarrassment. Why are we like this? Why can't we be more normal? What's up with us? To find a way to some answers, continue to the second part of the exercise. Insert the above entries into the following sentence. How safe would it have been for you to do this, insert sentence, in your childhood, i.e., staying calm, taking pride in yourself, etc. Now, try to reflect on why it might have been unsafe to do or feel a certain way in the past. It didn't feel safe to feel calm because maybe someone was drinking heavily in the house. It didn't feel safe to take pride in oneself because maybe someone was obsessively jealous. It didn't feel safe to trust because someone was cruel or unreliable. It didn't feel safe to miss people who were absent because maybe the pain would have broken one's heart. Notice that in all cases, what in later life becomes a problem starts off by being a very clever protective strategy. We are more mysterious to ourselves than we should be when we fail to see that much of what we do that looks odd or unusual in adult life is really a relic of a protective strategy that made a lot of sense in childhood. The point of waking up to the origins of a protective strategy is that we can then learn to see that it isn't necessary to hold on to it any longer. There is no reason to fail at work in order to avoid the spectre of jealousy. We can afford to miss people when they go because they'll be back and we can dare to feel and to love. We need not continue our loyalty to our past protective strategies once we understand the particular circumstances that once made them so necessary and that now no longer apply.
Once again, I think they hit it on the head by asking that question, would you have been safe to feel XYZ? I immediately thought of the taking pride in oneself. For me, that's a big thing. I talk about it in my book about my not recalling my parents ever saying that I was beautiful. And I'm like, that certainly contributed to it. And yeah, I'm also recognizing in what they said, I had some bullies when I was in elementary school. And so like, if I would have taken any pride in myself, they would have immediately attacked me. And it was like, oh, you think you're so smart. Oh, you think you're so pretty. You're not that thing. And then they would like ignore me on the playground, and I was isolated and by myself, and I didn't have anyone who stood up for me. And like, it is to this day why I try not to stand out in a crowd. It's one of the reasons why I don't like wearing fancy dresses. I don't like to like get all dolled up. It's because I have this fear of like standing out, and I'm realizing I could never stand out when I was little. It wasn't safe. So this for me is like, whoo, that was an awakening. I didn't even know that was happening. Or a thing for me that I didn't even know was a thing for me.
Oh, okay. So now I was going to ask you, what if you move to the next question then, do you think that still serves you given what you're trying to do?
No.
Yeah. I think standing out kind of we talked about it last week in terms of like influence. I would say, well, I guess my definition of influence. I think it would be something you standing out would require that.
What about for you?
I don't know if I necessarily, I don't think of my past that way anymore. So there are things that I know I guess I used to say about myself, but anything that I claim now, it's a behavior I'm choosing to just exhibit now. It's not influence. How do I just say it? Yeah, any behavior I'm exhibiting currently, regardless of how long I've done it or where the behavior started, I'm still choosing to do it now. And it probably serves me. Some of the things that what did I watch that made me kind of have to ask myself a question about this? It was addressing something about just network marketing. And just I had to ask myself if there was a fear I really had of building that to the level of, whatever. And I know there were times where I would like the success, like really be successful. And I know there were times where in my mind, there was a level of work that I believe I would have had to exhibit. And I know I did not want to do that. I know there was a thing in me, and either way, The idea now is for me to lean into, is that really what the reason was? Or is that just a thing I said to not, do you know what I mean? It's like, is that the the self-sabotatory excuse or whatever that I gave myself to say why I didn't try harder, why I didn't make more phone calls, so on, so on, so on, so on, so on. And so I had some fun with that yesterday and thinking about that. So I don't know if I, but the childhood stuff, I don't really, because so much of that stuff I know I don't remember accurately. I know it's just stories I've told. I remember at one point just in therapy, I used to say something and she asked me something. She's like, "Oh, well, last week you told me this." I remember like later thinking, "Oh wow, like do I do that? Like especially like, this idea of a victim. Like, do I make the story more whatever to kind of support the fact that I felt like a victim during that period of exploring being raped and all that?" So it's just a very, again, it's an interesting, all of this is very interesting. I like that it all moves and it's all very, very pliable. Because tomorrow something that used to be hung up on, it'll be gone. It'll be years and you're like, oh, this doesn't affect me anymore. So
Yeah,
I love that life really just moves like that.
that's
It's
where
just
we
great
are
to be with her.
on this journey of life. So let us know if this helped you. What are some of the things that maybe, like a question, if you had to ask that question, like what is the answer for it? And does it still serve you? To the second question's point, I think this is a really interesting for us to explore ourselves. And before we say, so you finally made the decision to write the book that you've been thinking about in your head, but how do you get that jumbled mess out of your head and onto paper so that way you can finally publish the book? And then how do you market it? How do you actually make money from it? Well, I'm inviting you to my next free masterclass on Monday, September 16th at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, where I'm going over how to earn a lucrative income by becoming a best-selling author from scratch. See you there. That's right. It's happening today. So I just wanted to make sure that you guys knew about it and you were aware. If you sign up today and let me know that you signed up through seeing us today on Say That channel, I will send you a free copy of my book.
Say
And
that.
is how we're going to leave today. We'll see you next week. But as always, remember that you deserve the good life. Say that.
Say that. We'll see you guys. Have an amazing week. Make sure you tune into Janelle tonight. Peace.